The gleaming new sports car sat in the driveway like a symbol of everything I had lost. Sydney was twirling around it, laughing like she had just won the lottery. My jackpot. The sound of her laughter was deafening, but the worst part? She wasn't even aware of the destruction she had just caused. My name is Sophie, and I had just watched my sister steal my entire future right before my eyes. Isn't she beautiful? Sydney ran her perfectly manicured fingers over the car's hood, as if she had won the lottery, but in reality, she had just gambled with my life, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I got such a good deal. The salesman practically gave it away, Sydney bragged, her voice dripping with pride. As I stepped out of my sensible Honda, still wearing my work clothes from a 12-hour shift at the financial firm, I felt my blood start to boil. My phone buzzed again. Another overdraft alert from my savings account. I had been avoiding it, hoping it was just some mistake, but I could feel the truth closing in. Sydney, I managed to say, keeping my voice steady despite the chaos inside. Where did you get the money for this? She didn't even flinch. Oh, don't start with the lecture, she snapped, tossing her hair dramatically. Mom and Dad helped me figure it out, right, guys? Our parents stood behind her, champagne glasses in hand, their smug expressions almost as irritating as Sydney's. Your sister needed reliable transportation, honey, Mom chimed in, stepping forward with a soft, placating smile. The same smile she always wore when she was trying to smooth things over. But my world tilted sideways the moment Mom spoke those words. That was my money. My house down payment. $50,000 I had been saving for years. All gone. You used my emergency account, didn't you? I barely whispered the words, a sick realization sinking in. That account had been set aside for emergencies, my future, my security, and now it was gone. Sophie, please, don't be dramatic, Sydney rolled her eyes, the nerve of her hitting me like a slap in the face. You can save it up again. You're good with money. Besides, you're always saying family comes first, right? I pulled my phone from my pocket, showing her the balance. $127.43. You drained my account without asking. Without telling me, I said through clenched teeth. Sophie, she's been struggling, Mom interjected, her voice now tight, as if she were trying to control the situation. You've always been the one who helps. The strong one. The one they can always count on. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been playing the role of the family's caretaker for years, but now I wasn't the one being cared for. I took a deep breath, steadying my hands, the rage building in my chest. I had been pushed to the limit. I've been the one covering everything, I said coldly, eyes narrowing. I've been covering Dad's credit card payment since his early retirement, and your emergency credit line was secured with my savings. Dad froze, his glass of champagne half raised. What are you doing? His voice was shaky, his face pale. I dialed the bank's number, speaking louder than I had ever done in front of my family. Yes, I need to close account number 847392 effective immediately. I could feel the panic in the air. My mom lunged forward, reaching for my phone, but it was too late. I was done. I'm closing it. It's my money. No, Mom shrieked, but I stepped back, a sense of power coursing through me for the first time in years. It's over, Mom. You've all drained me dry and I'm done. Sydney's voice cut through the tension like a knife. You're just jealous, she stormed after me. Mom and Dad love me more. You're always so boring. At least I'm living my life. I stopped in my tracks, feeling the heat of her words. I turned slowly, locking eyes with her as I let a smile creep onto my face. You know what's interesting about karma, Sydney? It's not patient. Sometimes it shows up right when you least expect it. What's that supposed to mean? She snapped, her tone mocking. I smiled, sliding into my car. You'll find out in about, 72 hours, when your credit cards stop working, give or take. As I pulled away from the house, I saw Dad frantically dialing his phone, while Mom cradled a sobbing Sydney in her arms. The family portrait on the wall flashed in my mind, Mom and Dad flanking their favorite daughter. The portrait I paid for last Christmas, but not anymore. The car zoomed away from the house, but this wasn't over yet. This was only the beginning. The revenge wasn't complete, and the real consequences were just starting. Sophie's revenge has just begun. Will she let her family off the hook, or will they feel the weight of their betrayal? Hit the subscribe button now to see how far Sophie goes. They've called 17 times since yesterday, I said through clenched teeth, staring at my phone. The vibration of constant messages filled the silence, but I didn't dare open them. Not yet. I let out a deep sigh, feeling the weight of what I had done. Turning my back on my family felt like a betrayal, but it was nothing compared to what they'd done to me. Let me see, Bryce said quietly, and before I could protest, his fingers were already scrolling through my phone, his eyes scanning the constant flood of messages. He paused on the screen, reading aloud. Sophie, please call us immediately. This is an emergency. Your sister is crying herself sick. I couldn't help but laugh. This was rich. They had drained me, dry, used me, and now they wanted me to feel sorry for them? I took another sip of my drink, the alcohol burning down my throat, a perfect match for the fire that still raged in my chest. You know what I remember from growing up? I remember making Sydney's lunch while Mom rested from her headaches. I remember helping Dad balance checkbooks at 13 because he couldn't figure out why we were always overdrawn. And I remember being told I couldn't go to my first choice college because Sydney needed braces. And now they've stolen my house down payment. $50,000. Bryce's fingers flew over his laptop, and my stomach dropped as I watched him pull up a list of transactions I never noticed. Look at this. They've been siphoning money from your linked accounts for years. Small amounts, but it adds up. $20 here, $50 there. A constant stream of little thefts. The bar's dim lighting couldn't hide the reality unfolding in front of me. The truth was staring me in the face. I had been blind to all of it. I barely heard my phone buzz again. Mom's face filled the screen, a mix of panic and guilt. Sophie, please pick up, Bryce urged. They need to realize this is no longer a game. I hesitated, but then clicked on the call, my heart pounding in my chest. Hello, I said, my voice cold. Sophie, Mom's voice cracked, panic all over it. The bank called. They're saying something about defaulted credit lines and frozen accounts. My throat tightened, and I could feel the blood rushing to my ears. What did you do? I asked, unable to mask the rage in my voice. Exactly what I said I would, Mom stammered, her voice shaky. I closed your accounts. I didn't even flinch. You did what? My voice was low, a growl of disbelief. But your father's cards aren't working, she continued, her words tumbling out. We have bills due. Sydney needs... I cut her off, the anger swelling inside me. What about what I need, Mom? Like the house I've been saving for since I was 23? That's different. We're family. Her voice took on that pleading, familiar tone. The one I had grown up hearing every time they needed something from me. Family doesn't steal from each other, I snapped. The words burned in my throat. I was done. Steal? Mom's voice rose, desperation filling her tone. We borrowed, you know we're good for it. I couldn't hold back my laugh. Bitter, harsh. Really? Because according to Dad's credit report, yeah, I can see it. I'm still listed as an authorized user. You're maxed out on 6 credit cards. Cards I've been making the minimum payments on for 2 years. Silence hung on the line, the air thick with tension. And then she whispered. Sophie. Mom's voice softened, almost pleading. Please just come over. We can talk about this. I set my drink down with a calmness I didn't feel. Sure, I said, my voice deadpan. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Bryce raised an eyebrow, his expression half amused, half intrigued. You're really going? They need to see my face when their world crashes down, I replied, my fingers tight around my purse. Want to drive? Sophie has drawn her line in the sand, but will her family learn their lesson? Or will they drag her back in with their guilt trips? Don't miss what happens next. Hit subscribe to find out how Sophie's revenge unfolds. You can't do this to us, Mom said, her panic rising as she grabbed my arm. The words hung in the air, a desperate plea for something, for me to come back, to save them once again. I gently pulled her hand off me, the disgust rising in my chest. Parents protect their children. They don't use them as financial cushions. They don't steal their dreams to fund another child's impulse purchases. Sophie, please. Dad's voice cracked as he stepped forward, his tone trembling with guilt. Check your mail tomorrow, I said calmly, my voice an icy whisper. The bank's sending formal notices about the default. Oh, and Sydney better park that car in the garage. Repo men work at night. The door closed behind me with a soft click, but it felt like a slam that would reverberate through my family for a long time. You've seen the spark of Sophie's revenge, but how much farther will she go to make them feel the consequences of their betrayal? Will they realize what they've done before it's too late? Stay tuned for the next shocking twist. Hit the subscribe button to watch the next chapter unfold, because Sophie is just getting started. In the driveway, Bryce was waiting in his car, engine running. I slid into the passenger seat, buckling my seatbelt as I looked at my phone. My mom's silhouette appeared in the window, already on the phone, probably calling her sister to borrow money. No, I answered honestly, my voice steady but filled with a cold, simmering rage. But I will be. For the first time in my life, I will be. They're outside again, Bryce said, glancing out of the car's side mirror. Your mom's crying in the car while Sydney's buzzing every unit in the building. I didn't look up from my laptop. They've been doing this for 3 days. The neighbors are starting to complain. My phone buzzed with another text from Sydney. You're destroying this family. I ignored it, my fingers flying across the keyboard, pulling up the documents. Then another voice rang out from the kitchen, sarcastic and biting. They're destroying themselves quite nicely without your help, Eliza, my best friend and realtor, said as she walked in, 3 cups of coffee in hand. The repo men picked up Sydney's car this morning, she continued, handing me a cup, her smile wide. I may have recorded it for posterity. Show me, I said, reaching for her phone, already knowing what I was about to see. The video played. Sydney screaming at 2 impassive men as they hooked her red sports car to a tow truck. Mom tried to block them, throwing herself in front of the car while Dad flailed, waving papers in their faces. I pointed at the screen. Those papers are probably the loan documents they forged my signature on. I found out about it yesterday. Identity theft. Eliza whistled, impressed by the chaos and the audacity. That's not just karma anymore. That's criminal. The buzzer rang again. Sydney's voice crackled through the intercom. I know you're in there. You can't ignore us forever. Watch me, I muttered, but Eliza was already striding toward the intercom. Listen up, you entitled little brat, she snapped into the speaker. Your sister's not available to bail you out anymore. Try getting a job instead of a lawyer. You'll need both. Bryce choked on his coffee. Damn, Eliza. Someone had to say it. Eliza turned to me. Speaking of lawyers, did you file those identity theft charges? Tomorrow morning, I said, pulling up the documents on my screen. Proof they used my information to secure loans I never approved. The buzzer rang again, this time continuously, like a desperate call for help. Mom and Sydney's voices blended together, both pleading, but not for much longer. That's it, Eliza said, grabbing her purse. I'm calling the police. This is harassment. Wait, I said, standing up, a sudden surge of clarity taking over. I walked to the elevator, my heart pounding but my steps steady. This time there was no hesitation. This time I wasn't going to sit back and let them make me feel guilty for everything I had done for them. The elevator doors opened, and when I stepped out into the lobby, there they were. Sydney's mascara-streaked face pressed against the glass. Mom was standing behind her, her hands pressed to her temples in stress. Sydney shoved through the door as soon as I opened it. Do you know what you've done? Sydney screamed, her voice cracking with panic. The bank froze everything. They're saying Dad might face fraud charges. I didn't flinch. That's what happens when you forge loan documents, I replied calmly, my voice cold as ice. Mom tried to interrupt, but I wasn't done. We didn't forge anything, she protested, trying to salvage what little dignity she had left. We just used your information as a guarantor. Always helped? Something inside me snapped. I could feel the years of resentment boiling to the surface. You mean like when I was 14, getting up at 5 a.m. to tutor Sydney because you couldn't be bothered? Or when I worked 2 jobs in college while Sydney dropped out of 3 universities on my dime? That's not fair, Sydney yelled, stepping closer, as if trying to push my buttons one last time. Because what? I cut her off, the words sharp and final. Because Mom and Dad love you more? They can keep their love. I'm done paying for it. Sophie has now made her stand, and the chaos is only just beginning. Will her family realize the true cost of their actions before everything spirals out of control? How far will Sophie go to make them pay for what they've done? Stay tuned for the next shocking twist. Hit that subscribe button to find out what happens next, because Sophie's revenge is only heating up. No, my voice cut through the tension, ice cold and steady. Those were just practice runs. You've been testing my boundaries my whole life, seeing just how much you could take before I broke. Guess what? You finally did it. I could see it, the moment she realized I wasn't backing down. Sydney's face crumpled, the tears coming quickly, but this time I didn't feel sorry for her. But you're my sister. You're supposed to protect me, she wailed, as if I owed her something. I stood tall, my voice unwavering. I did protect you. For 29 years. I protected you from consequences. Not anymore. As Sydney's sobs filled the air, I heard the sound of a police siren. The car pulled up to the curb with a sharp screech, cutting through the tension like a knife. Eliza stepped out, her confident stride echoing the changes that had already begun. Behind her, a police officer approached me, his face stern and businesslike. "Miss," the officer said, "we received a complaint about harassment." I didn't flinch. "That's them!" Eliza pointed directly at my family, unleashing the fury she had been holding in for days. "They've been harassing my friend for days." Mom's face drained of color, her eyes wide with panic. "Sophie, you wouldn't—" She trailed off, too scared to finish the sentence. I stepped back into my building, letting the door swing closed behind me with a finality that echoed through my bones. "I would," I said, my voice cold as steel. "And if you come here again, I'll add it to the identity theft charges I'm filing tomorrow." The officer's expression hardened as he turned to my parents. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you both to step away from the building." I watched through the glass as they were escorted to the police car. Sydney looked back once, her face twisted in fury and fear. Mom didn't even look back. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had the power, and it tasted sweet. Sophie's family thought they could escape the consequences of their actions, but karma is knocking at their door. What will happen next when the law catches up with them? Hit that subscribe button to see the next shocking twist unfold. Sophie's revenge is only just beginning. 300,000, Bryce whispered, his voice low but heavy with the weight of the numbers. That's how much they've siphoned over the years. The room spun around me. My hand gripped the counter for support, my breath catching in my throat. That's impossible, I managed to gasp, the shock surging through my veins. $300,000. I had worked my whole life for that money, building up my future, while they had been stealing from me piece by piece. "The numbers don't lie," Bryce said calmly, pulling up more documents on the screen. Each page was another nail in the coffin, proof of the betrayal I had ignored for too long. "And there's something else. Your name's on Sydney's car loan as a co-signer. Did you sign anything?" I didn't even have to think about it. "Never." "Then we've got them," Bryce said, his fingers flying over the keyboard. He reached for his phone. "This is straight up fraud." The room felt like it was closing in on me, the air thick with disbelief and rage. Just as I tried to process everything, there was a knock at the door, sharp, sudden, and unexpected. We both jumped. I stood up, walking to the door, checking through the peephole. It was Eliza, holding a manila envelope with a knowing look on her face. "You need to see this," she said, bursting into the apartment. "I was checking property records for that house we looked at, and guess what popped up? Your parents listed you as a guarantor on their condo refinance last week." "What?" My voice cracked as I snatched the papers from her hand. There it was, my signature, but it was forged again. "They're desperate," Bryce said, his voice quiet but full of dangerous certainty. "The banks are closing in and they're using your name to try to stay afloat." I didn't even have time to react before my phone buzzed. It was my boss, Garrett, at midnight. "Sophie?" His voice was grave when I answered, the tension clear in his tone. "I'm sorry to call so late, but there's something you should know. Your sister just applied for a job here. She listed you as a reference, and there are some discrepancies in her application. What kind of discrepancies? I demanded, the rage building inside me. She claims she has a finance degree and 3 years of experience. She says you can verify it. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I laughed, but the sound was hollow, full of disbelief and disgust. She dropped out after 1 semester. I thought so. There was the rustling of papers on Garrett's end. Sophie, given your position at the firm, if she's attempting fraud, I understand. My spine straightened, a cold clarity coming over me. Garrett, I need to tell you something about my family. What happens when a family's deception unravels? Sophie is now facing the full extent of her family's betrayal. But will they pay the price for their actions? Stay tuned because things are about to take a darker turn. Hit that subscribe button to see how Sophie finally takes back control. Then that's on them, Bryce said firmly, his voice cutting through the thick air of uncertainty that had settled around us. They made their choices for years. I nodded, still clutching my phone, my mind racing. Just as I started to digest Bryce's words, another text popped up. My heart sank as I read the message from Sydney. If anything happens to Dad, it's your fault. I'll never forgive you. I couldn't help but feel a sense of fury and vindication at the same time. They were trying to manipulate me again, twisting the narrative as they always had. I looked over at Eliza, who was silently waiting, her eyes watching me closely. I took the phone back from her hand, my fingers shaking, but I was done being manipulated. I typed back, fingers flying across the keys. If anything happens to Dad, it's because of choices you all made. Choices that are about to have very real consequences. I hit send and leaned back in my chair, the weight of the words sinking in. What are you going to do? Eliza asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper, knowing the gravity of what was about to unfold. I turned my eyes toward the stack of evidence on the table. The forged signatures, the fraudulent loans, the years of financial abuse they'd orchestrated behind my back, with me none the wiser. But not anymore. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't the one who had been blind for years. I was done. I'm going to do what I should have done years ago, I replied, the clarity in my voice a sharp contrast to the chaos swirling around us. I picked up my phone again, the weight of the decision settling in. I'm calling the police, and then I'm calling every bank they've defrauded using my name. Sophie is finally ready to face her family's treachery head-on. But what happens when you call the law on your own blood? Can Sophie get her revenge without losing herself in the process? Stay tuned, because the consequences are just beginning. Hit that subscribe button now to watch the storm unfold. The fluorescent lights of the police station made everything look harsh and cold, but it was nothing compared to what I was about to lay on the table. Detective Rivera sat across from me, spreading the documents out in front of her. Her eyebrows raised slightly as she flipped through the papers. This is extensive, she said, looking up at me with an expression that was a mix of surprise and concern. And you're saying this has been going on for years? I nodded, my eyes cold but determined. I didn't realize how long it had gone on until yesterday. I handed her another folder, the weight of the betrayal heavy in my hands. These are the forged loan documents, my signatures on all of them, but I never signed anything. And your parents and sister did this? Detective Rivera asked, her voice careful but firm. Yes. I met her eyes, feeling the full weight of the truth as I said it. They used my information to secure loans, open credit lines, even co-sign a car. The detective made a note, her face grim. This is serious fraud, miss. Once we file these charges, there's no going back. Are you sure you want to proceed? I didn't hesitate. Yes. The word rang in the air with finality. The decision had been made long before I walked into that office. As I said the word, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Sydney. Dad's being released from the hospital. No thanks to you. Mom's crying herself sick. How can you be so heartless? I turned my phone around and showed the detective the message. This is why I'm sure. They're still trying to manipulate me even now. This isn't about Dad's health. It's about them trying to guilt-trip me back into submission. The detective nodded slowly, her expression softening. I see this more often than you'd think, she said, almost sympathetically. Family financial abuse is, unfortunately, common. Just as I was about to respond, the door burst open. Garrett, my boss, strode in with a thick manila envelope under his arm. "Sorry I'm late," he said, taking a seat beside me. "But I brought something you need to see." He spread out more documents across the desk, and I felt my heart drop. It was like every secret they'd tried to hide was about to explode in front of me. "Sophie," Garrett said, looking at me with a serious expression. Sydney's fraudulent job application was just the tip of the iceberg. He pulled out more papers, employment verifications, academic records, loan applications, all with my forged signature as a reference or guarantor. "She's been using your name to apply for jobs across the city," Garrett explained, his voice tight, "claiming you'd verify her fake credentials. Some companies have already started investigating." Detective Rivera's pen moved faster as she took notes. "This changes things. We're looking at multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse." My phone rang. Mom again. The detective nodded for me to answer and put it on speaker. I took a deep breath, knowing this call would be the final push. What happens when Sophie's family realizes they can't escape the truth? The web of deceit is unraveling, and Sophie is about to see the full power of her revenge unfold. Stay tuned to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. Don't miss the next shocking twist. Hit subscribe now because you won't believe what happens next. "Sophie, please," Mom's voice cracked through the phone. It was a sound I'd heard many times before, but this time, it hit me like a physical blow. "The bank is threatening to press charges against your father. They're saying something about loan fraud. You have to help us." I sat back, my stomach twisting. I couldn't believe it. After everything they had done to me, now they were trying to guilt-trip me into saving them? I barely held back the laugh that rose in my throat. "I can't, Mom. Not anymore." The line went silent, and when she spoke again, her voice was a broken whisper. "But we're family. After everything we've done for you, everything you've done for me?" I couldn't stop the bitter laugh. "You mean stealing my identity, forging my signature, draining my accounts?" The words came out like venom, every syllable filled with the weight of betrayal. "We never meant to hurt you. We just needed help, and you're so good with money." The words hung in the air, hollow. Manipulation, guilt, the same tactics they had always used. I couldn't believe I was falling for it again, but I wouldn't this time. "Mrs. Price," Detective Rivera's voice cut through the air. "This is Detective Rivera with the Financial Crimes Unit. I advise you to stop talking and contact a lawyer immediately." The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand. My heart pounded, but for the first time, I felt a rush of satisfaction. "That should give them something to think about," Detective Rivera said, gathering the evidence we'd collected. "We'll start processing these right away. Given the evidence, we should have arrest warrants by morning." "Arrest warrants?" My stomach lurched. "They'll actually be arrested?" "This is felony fraud," Garrett added gently, his voice calm but serious. "What did you think would happen?" Before I could answer, my phone exploded with texts from Sydney. "What did you do? The police are calling Mom and Dad. I can't believe you'd betray us like this. You're dead to me." Then a photo, us as kids, me helping Sydney with her homework, both of us smiling. The caption read, "Remember when you were actually a good sister?" "That's their specialty," I told Detective Rivera, showing her the messages. "Emotional manipulation. They take and take, then make you feel guilty for noticing. Classic abuse pattern." She nodded. "Would you like to press charges for the harassment as well?" "Yes," I said, surprising myself with my firmness. "Yes, I would." Garrett squeezed my shoulder, his support unwavering. "You're doing the right thing. They need to face consequences." "I know," I replied, standing up and gathering my things. "I just wish it didn't hurt so much." Sophie's family thought they could escape the consequences of their actions, but karma is knocking at their door. What will happen next when the law catches up with them? Stay tuned to see how it all unfolds. Hit that subscribe button now to see how far Sophie will go to take back what's hers and make her family face the truth. The morning sun was rising, and I could feel the tension tightening in my chest. I had just cut ties with my family, and everything was changing. I stepped into my office, and Eliza dropped a local newspaper on my desk, the headline glaring back at me, "Local family charged in identity theft scheme." I pushed the paper away, suddenly sick to my stomach. I don't want to see it. You need to see it, Eliza insisted, flipping to the article. They're trying to spin it to the media. Your mom gave an interview claiming you're mentally unstable and misunderstanding family obligations. Classic narcissist move. Bryce's voice came from the doorway. When caught, discredit the victim. I couldn't believe it. They still weren't taking responsibility. My office phone lit up again. Another unknown number. They had been finding ways around my blocks all week. Watch this, I said, putting it on speaker. Hello, Sophie. It was my Aunt Linda. How could you do this to your own parents? They're devastated. Sydney's reputation is ruined. Reputation? My voice was steady, but the rage burned underneath. You mean their reputation for stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from me? For forging my signature? For committing felony fraud? There was a long pause on the other end, followed by a sharp click. Boom, Eliza grinned. That shut her up. But it didn't stop there. My email pinged, and I opened a message from Detective Rivera. They're trying to negotiate a plea deal. Attached was a screenshot of Sydney's social media post. My sister destroyed our family because she's jealous of my success. Now she's trying to send our parents to jail. Please share our GoFundMe for legal expenses. Oh, hell no, Eliza said, grabbing her phone. I'm reporting that fundraiser for fraud. Don't bother, Bryce said, typing furiously on his laptop. I already did, and I may have sent screenshots to the prosecutor showing them trying to raise money while claiming poverty to the court. My desk phone rang again. This time, it was Garrett. Sophie, come to my office. There's something you need to see. Sophie's family is trying to spin their lies to the public, but Sophie's truth is stronger than their manipulation. Will they get away with it? Or will Sophie's courage finally tear their web of deceit apart? Stay tuned for the next shocking chapter. Hit subscribe now to find out what happens next. I blinked in disbelief when Garrett said, The board was impressed with how you handled this situation. They're offering you a promotion, senior risk analyst. I could hardly process the words. What? You spotted financial fraud in your own family and had the courage to report it. That's exactly the kind of integrity we need in risk management. Back in my office, Eliza and Bryce were waiting for me, looking at me with wide eyes. Well? Eliza demanded, her voice sharp with excitement. I got promoted, I said, still in shock. Yes. She hugged me tightly. See? Karma works both ways. But even with the promotion, I couldn't forget the pain of everything I had lost. Then my phone buzzed again. An email from my parents' lawyer. Your parents are willing to take a plea deal, but they want you to write a letter to the judge asking for leniency. Delete it, Bryce advised. No, I said firmly, starting to type. I'm writing back. Dear Mr. Harrison, my parents and sister committed systematic financial fraud over several years, stealing my identity and hundreds of thousands of dollars. They showed no remorse until court. They continue to harass me and attempt to manipulate public opinion. I will not be writing a letter of leniency. Instead, I will be submitting a victim impact statement detailing every forged signature, every stolen dollar, and every attempt to destroy my reputation. When I finally stood up for myself, they wanted to play games with the legal system. Game on. Regards, Sophie Savage, Eliza whispered, reading over my shoulder. No, I said, hitting send. Just honest. Then my phone buzzed again, and this time it was from Detective Rivera. Your parents' house just went into foreclosure. They're being evicted next week. I stared at the message, remembering the Sunday dinners, the holidays, the birthdays, all fake, all built on stolen money and lies. You okay? Bryce asked softly. I will be, I said, staring out of my office window. The city stretched out below me. My family was facing real consequences for the first time in their lives. You know what's funny? They always said I was the responsible one, the boring one, the one who needed to help everyone else shine. And now? Now I'm the one with the promotion, the clean credit score, and the clear conscience. I turned back to my desk, a smile tugging at my lips. They can keep their drama. I've got work to do. Speaking of work, Eliza pulled out her tablet. Ready to look at more houses? There's a beautiful one just listed, perfect for a newly promoted senior risk analyst. I smiled. Show me. Sophie's family is facing the consequences of their actions. But what's next for Sophie? Will she finally find the peace she's been searching for? Stay tuned for the final chapter because Sophie is about to walk into a future of her own making. Hit that subscribe button now. This story is far from over. The courtroom felt smaller than I expected, the walls closing in on me as I took my seat. My family was at the defendant's table, looking diminished, their once confident air shattered. Sydney, in the gallery, shot me venomous glares. "All rise," the bailiff called. I stood, gripping my victim impact statement, 3 pages that had taken weeks to write. Every word was filled with years of suppressed truth. "The state versus April and Philip," the judge began, but was interrupted by commotion at the courtroom door. My parents' lawyer rushed in, whispering urgently to them. Mom's face crumpled. Dad's shoulders slumped. "Your Honor," their lawyer addressed the court. "My clients wish to change their plea to guilty on all counts." Sydney gasped, her voice shrill. "Mom, Dad, no!" The judge peered over his glasses. "You understand this means no trial, no chance to present your defense?" "We understand," Dad said, his voice barely audible. What happens when Sophie's family finally faces the consequences of their actions? Will they finally understand the depth of the betrayal they caused? Stay tuned to the shocking conclusion. Hit subscribe now. You won't want to miss how this story ends. The room was tense, thick with the weight of everything I had been through. I had finally reached this moment, and I wasn't going to let my family's manipulations go unnoticed any longer. As I stood there in the courtroom, I couldn't help but think of all the years they had used me, drained me dry, and now here we were, my family about to face the full consequences of their greed. The judge cleared his throat and addressed the court. "I believe we're ready for sentencing." Mom and Dad looked defeated. Their heads were lowered, their faces a picture of regret and humiliation. I could feel a cold satisfaction settle into my chest. "Sophie Price," the judge said, turning to me, "please present your victim impact statement." I walked up to the podium, every step feeling heavier than the last. I could hear Sydney sobbing from the gallery, her cries echoing in the silent room. I took a deep breath, steadying my hands before I began. "Your Honor, I have spent most of my life taking care of my family. I have given up my own dreams to support their failures. I sacrificed everything, my future, my savings, my well-being, just so they could live a life they never earned." I paused, my voice growing firmer. "They stole from me for years. They used me as their personal ATM. I worked tirelessly while they squandered everything I gave them. And when I asked for something in return, just a little respect, just a little consideration, I was met with nothing but more manipulation and deceit. Your Honor," I continued, "I am no longer the person who bends over backward for them. I am not the one who has been enabling their lies. They need to face the consequences of their actions, and I need to reclaim my future." I could see my parents' faces twisted in shame, but there was no turning back now. This was the moment when I took control of my own life, my own destiny. The judge nodded, his expression solemn. "Thank you, Miss Price. We will now proceed with sentencing." Sydney's shrill voice cut through the room. "You're ruining our family," she screamed, standing up in the gallery. "You're the reason everything's falling apart. You're dead to me." I turned to face her, my eyes cold and unflinching. "I'm not the one who ruined this family, Sydney. You and Mom and Dad did that. I'm just the one who's finally holding you accountable." The moment of truth has arrived for Sophie's family, but will they truly face the consequences for their actions? Sophie's journey is almost over, but there's one more twist in store. Hit that subscribe button to see the shocking conclusion to this story. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence as the judge prepared to speak. Based on the severity of the crimes and the overwhelming evidence presented, I am ready to issue my sentence. My heart raced as I waited for the final verdict. I had come so far, fought so hard to get here. It was all about to be decided in one moment. "Mr. and Mrs. Price," the judge continued, "you are both hereby sentenced to 5 years in state prison with the possibility of parole after 3 years. Additionally, you are ordered to repay all funds stolen from your daughter, Sophie Price. I heard Sydney gasp from the gallery. Mom and Dad exchanged a look of horror, but I felt nothing but relief. They had done this to themselves. Sydney Price, the judge said, turning his gaze toward my sister. Your actions have also been deemed criminal. You are hereby sentenced to 3 years in prison for identity theft, fraud, and financial abuse. Your sentencing will begin immediately. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders as the judge's gavel struck, sealing their fate. This was the end. No more lies, no more manipulation. Finally, they would face the consequences of what they had done. Sophie's family has been sentenced, but will Sophie ever truly find peace? The road to redemption is never easy, but Sophie is finally free from their grip. Stay tuned for the shocking final chapter to this epic story. Hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss the final twist. As the court session ended, I stood up, my heart racing with a mixture of emotions. Relief, anger, satisfaction. It all felt like a whirlwind. Eliza and Bryce stood beside me, their presence a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. Are you okay? Bryce asked softly, his eyes full of concern. I nodded, my voice steady. I am now. For the first time in my life, I feel like I've taken control. We stepped out of the courtroom, reporters swarming around us. The cameras flashed, and I could hear the questions being shouted at me. How does it feel to see your family punished for their crimes? Do you feel any remorse for putting your parents and sister in jail? I turned to face the crowd, my expression calm but resolute. I didn't put them in jail. Their choices did. They've been lying and stealing from me for years, and now they're facing the consequences of their actions. I'm finally free of their manipulation. As I walked out of the courthouse, I saw my parents being led away in handcuffs, their faces pale and full of regret. Sydney was still yelling, her face twisted with rage and fear. Goodbye, I whispered, walking away with my head held high. The final chapter of Sophie's journey is here, but the fallout from her family's betrayal is only just beginning. Will Sophie continue to thrive? Will her family ever face the full consequences of their actions? Don't miss the final twist. Hit the subscribe button now to find out what happens next. 2 weeks later, I was standing in the living room of my new home. The sun streamed through the bay windows, casting a warm glow on the sleek granite countertops and polished hardwood floors. I had made it. This house, this life, it was all mine. Eliza and Bryce were there with me, helping me unpack the last of the boxes. There was no more chaos, no more family drama, just peace. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was truly free. We did it, Eliza said, handing me a glass of champagne. This is your new beginning. I smiled, taking the glass from her. It's not just a new beginning, it's the life I deserve. My phone buzzed and I glanced at it, expecting another media alert. But instead, it was a text from my boss, Garrett. Congratulations, Sophie. Your presentation at the Financial Security Conference was amazing. The board wants to offer you a promotion to Senior Risk Analyst. Well deserved. I couldn't stop the smile that spread across my face. Looks like the universe is finally on my side. Sophie has reclaimed her life, and now her future is in her hands. What will happen next? Will she continue to rise above her family's betrayal? The journey isn't over yet, and the best is yet to come. Hit that subscribe button to follow Sophie's incredible new chapter. A month later, I stood in front of my new house, the one I had fought so hard for. The last remnants of my old life were gone, my family, my sacrifices, my guilt. And now I was starting fresh. The sky was clear, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything I had overcome. This was my moment, my time. I turned to Bryce and Eliza, who were standing beside me, ready to celebrate. To new beginnings, I said, raising my glass. To Sophie, Eliza grinned, the woman who proved that sometimes the best revenge is living well. And so, Sophie's journey comes to an end. The lesson here is clear. Don't let anyone take your future from you. Fight for yourself, and the universe will reward you. Stay tuned for more shocking stories. Hit that subscribe button and join us for the next chapter.